For example, one use case that I like a lot recently is that I used to do professional work building dashboards and analytical systems on company data for other companies at one point in my life. And to be able to just provide an AI model access to my company's database, and I just ask it the questions and it just look at the data, write the scripts, compile the data, and here's the report. And I'm like, I used to spend 6 years of my career doing this for others, and now I can just prompt it away.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbenkov's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 240. As artificial intelligence integrates deeper into the enterprise ecosystem, a massive shift is occurring away from centralized, closed-source models toward accessible open-source alternatives. While proprietary systems have historically dominated the market, the performance gap is shrinking rapidly. Open-source solutions now offer drop-in replacements that are up to 5 times more cost-effective, allowing businesses to run highly specialized AI without relying on massive, expensive infrastructure. This transition is crucial because it fundamentally changes how organizations deploy AI. Instead of relying on a single generalized model with built-in biases, businesses can now leverage platforms hosting tens of thousands of unique models, essentially acting as an operating system for AI workloads. From language-specific adaptations for global markets to hyper-specialized models for robotics, coding, and construction safety, these accessible tools eliminate the need for extensive developer expertise or complex GPU clusters. The conversation unpacks the strategic advantages of moving from expensive, generalized AI to affordable, tailored models. Listeners will discover how to leverage these decentralized tools to enhance productivity, maintain data control, and build custom solutions that will drive competitive advantage in the rapidly evolving digital landscape. A little bit about today's guest, Eugene Cheah, is the CEO of Featherless AI, a company operating the world's largest AI model platform, currently hosting over 30,000 models with plans to scale into the millions. His journey into artificial intelligence began unexpectedly through a university hackathon project called GPU.js, which inadvertently became the backbone for running AI in web browsers for nearly 6 years. Today, his work focuses on simplifying AI deployment by offering serverless inference services that remove the complex technical barriers of running advanced models. All right, Eugene, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. Very much looking forward to the discussion, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me here, and excited to see where we head towards.
Yeah. So the first question that I ask every guest is, how in the world did you get involved in the work that you're doing? Was there like an event, or was there something that just drew you into this world of AI, or have you just always been interested in what you're up to now?
I've been in AI for about a decade, but I think i- it's funny to say that I was dragged into the world of AI. And so this is pre-ChatGPT, pre-Transformer. What I did, one of the things that I did during university was a project called GPU.js, and it won me a hackathon. And the whole idea was to do a meme, and at one time I was like, what's the worst way we can run JavaScript? And it was to run it on a GPU, to compile JavaScript onto a GPU, and to run it in a browser. Because the meme at the time was run JavaScript on anything and everything, Raspberry Pis, etc. And so we managed to make it work, and we proved that, hey, this thing is only practical for, let's say, matrix multiplications and complicated math, but no one should be using it. If you want to do hard math, you should be using the GPU properly on the desktop.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out people actually wanted to use it. So people use it for artworks. People use it for simulating worlds in the browser, and then subsequently people also used it for this small little thing called AI models. So my random hackathon project that I did with a group of friends got integrated to Brain.js, and suddenly became the backbone for running AI models at that time
Crazy.
in the browser. And this was a hackathon project with duct tape
Right.
put together. And I had professors coming to me and and they were using it as a teaching tool, and they were like, why is it not working for some students' laptops? And I was like, you're using this for what? So I had to take lessons from the rare best, including Jeremy Howards and a few other folks that were the leaders of AI at that time, the grandfathers of AI, to help fix their students' laptops. And throughout that, since the decade ago, I saw the promise of AI during at the university, and then subsequently, I kept pace following up as I went through startups and
Mhm.
professional work as well. So that was I got dragged into the world of AI early on and into open source.
So interesting. So is your hackathon project still? I guess it's obviously evolved beyond duct tape, but is it still kind of a backbone, or has it been moved on from in the world of AI?
So this is going to get a little bit technical, but
Okay.
it's still online. Some people still use it, but in a good way, people have moved on from it because
Hmm.
when we created the project at that point in time, right, in order to do complicated math on the GPU, especially in the browser, there was no API for it. And so we had to fake the math because there was an API, a way to run GPU code, right, for simulating light, 3D objects, respectively. So we were using properties of a 3D engine
Mm,
to do math calculation.
mm,
It's like, you know how you have a certain layer of glass and the light goes through. You can do some and then the output of the light you can use that as a mimic for certain calculation. So it was a very inefficient process, but because GPUs are great at processing numbers at scale, people had use for it. Um, it took over 5 years subsequently for the browsers to finally have proper APIs to the GPU that allow you to do math calculations without needing to do these kind of hacks. And so newer AI frameworks on the browser have already switched over to this new API. But for a good period of time, for a good period of 6 years plus, we were the
6 years. Okay. Okay.
we were the means to run this on the GPU in the browser. So
That's crazy. That's crazy. So interesting.
I'm glad it's got people
Yeah,
have moved
yeah.
on.
Well, if it's what brought you or dragged you into the AI world, I mean that's cool. For 6 years for it to be used, that's pretty impressive. Very interesting. Okay, so things have evolved since then, and we're also going to be spending a bunch of time talking about the open models and the kind of world of open models. Maybe we could start off or dive into that a little bit. So, um, everybody listening to this podcast, and probably, I mean, I don't know who's not familiar with ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude nowadays. Those, I think OpenAI was obviously supposed to be an open model to begin with, but I don't think people are maybe super familiar with open models versus what it is that we're all paying for and utilizing every single day. Could you give us just a very quick primer on the differences, because I think that'll enable us to speak a little bit more deeply about what you guys are up to later on.
So fundamentally, from a technological standpoint, right, as far as we know, because a lot of the closed source models, we do not know some of the details behind the scene, but
Hmm.
from what it is publicly available, they are the same technology. The transformer architecture that underlines the vast majority of AI models pretty much works the same across all models with probably 1,000 tweaks to different ways. But if you zoom out far enough, it's the same.
Hmm. Hmm.
The big difference is who trained them and who decided to publish it. So respectively, you may have heard of like Anthropic, Gemini, and OpenAI's GPT's models. Those are closed source models, and so they have trained on this fundamental piece of AI technology, and choose to not release it to public and charge an API access, which, to be fair, is their right to do so.
Hmm.
Um, but advances since has been made into like making training cheaper, more efficient, more scalable, and various companies have started like producing open source models that you can download, and if you have the right hardware, run it on, let's say, your Mac Studio or your own GPUs, and have the same kind of models that run. So in particular, most famously, the company that broke ground on it was the Llama Line model, which is from Meta. Then in and that was the earlier generation of open source models. Then there was the Mistral line of model, and then subsequently there was a whole flood of models from the Chinese market, from various Chinese teams that were trying to like scale up AI. And then today, well, they dominate a lot of the open source model. We also see a lot of Western models that is being heavily used. Like for example, the Gamma line of model, which is from Google themselves, respectively, and that is of various different sizes. But a typical common point is that open source models tends to be a lot smaller in size, uh, mostly because you want to be able to run on your hardware. Well, the best frontier model is allegedly 5 to 10 times larger in size, and they are trained on significant more data. But 5 to 10 times larger doesn't necessarily mean 5 to 10 times better, and that's actually a key part of 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 why a lot of people gets rather excited about open source, because it's much smaller, much cheaper, and it's something that they can put in their hands.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, and I think this is also connected to one of the things that I want to talk about, which is like, privacy, security, and the ability to not have, I guess, I don't know if it's a proper term, like implicit bias in the models. I'm speaking to ChatGPT every day. It's got a lot of bias, right? I want specific answers, and it responds to them, or responds with them in a certain unique type of language or mindset that I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that open source models, if they haven't been trained, would not have that bias. Or am I incorrect in that?
I would argue probably not so, because no mostly because implicit bias is a very tough topic.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of all the models, open or closed, right, is, for example, trained on primarily on the English corpus, the web corpus, and that inherently means it has a very US English bias in itself.
Mm-hmm.
That and that unfortunately underpins all model respectively. And because English makes the bulk of the internet, by a large margin, there is that sort of bias. But I think what's more interesting and more specific is that well, we can't avoid some of these underlying what we call pre-training biases. I mean, this is from the original data.
Mm-hmm.
Open source models represents an opportunity for various companies and countries to take these models, despite their pre-trained bias, and realign it with a different set of biases. Because I don't think anyone can say that there's an unbiased model. I
Right.
don't think any country can say they are 100% neutral to everything is as well. So 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 what we can do instead is align that model to you, all your views, and what you would prefer. And that is something that is unique for us on the open source side. Unlike closed source models where that bias is not in your control, that bias is 100% within the company's control that built those models.
Very interesting. And then so I guess so apart from the bias, apart from the size, right? So you can have these some open source models run on your hardware. Maybe a point on that, like I have a decent desktop computer. Can I run some of these open source models with it, or do I need a much more sophisticated type of computer to enable to run this? Like I think I have like one of these higher end GPUs on it. Is that sufficient for some of these, or do I need something even more?
It depends on how high you want to go, actually.
Right.
So I'm assuming you have done some video editing, maybe played
Yes.
some video games, maybe at 4K, things like that. You probably have a graphic card that's at least 8 GB or even higher in VRAM, like maybe even 16.
Mhm.
Or if you have a MacBook Pro, MacBook Pros, especially the upgraded ones, have a lots of RAM space. You can I actually like to push people to try like the Gamma line models, like be the 27B or the 31Bs. When we say Bs, we're talking about the billions of parameters in size. For better or worse, think of it as the amount of gigabytes of RAM you need.
Okay.
And the reason why I love to push that model in particular is that a lot of people fully underestimate how things have changed.
Yes.
These models can run on most of these PCs that you're talking about. And they have already fully surpassed the original ChatGPT and the GPT 3.5 in terms of benchmarks, or performance, or ability to use. So what the first impression that you had with ChatGPT, that for the vast majority of people, can now be downloaded and run with some tinkering on pretty much most gaming PCs. But is it the smartest model? No, for that you need to go much higher. But even the basics of the early ChatGPT, that experience, that wow moment that you had, the fact that it can run means you can do lots of things on it. I like to show people that you can even do code front end, do changes, make video games just using these smaller and dumber models. Because the point I wanted to make in a lot of cases is that a lot of people like to wait for the bigger model. But if these models are good enough to really start coding, the barrier sometimes might be the person themselves, because there is an effort to put into prompt and to ask it, hey, please help me create this game, help me check in these changes. These models are already capable, and it's just a matter of like putting in the effort to try to use that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting to. It's like because as I mentioned before the recording, I'm not an expert in all of this as much as I would like to be. There's just not enough time in the day to run a company and keep up to date with every single latest model. But I think the questions that I'm getting from, say, other business owners is, well, we need to use ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc., but we are concerned about our data being stolen or being used for nefarious activities. Is there an opportunity to have kind of an in-house model or an in-house ChatGPT, for the specific company that's not biased towards whatever it is that the larger tech companies out there are having their bias, but have internal biases that might be beneficial for businesses? And if you're saying you just need a decent computer nowadays to run some of these earlier type models, or models that are as equivalent to earlier type ones, then yeah, I think that's very exciting. One maybe qualifying question here that I have for you is, so you're saying some of these open source models are good enough to run a number of different things. Can you quantify, is that even possible, the difference between some of these open source models and like the newest ChatGPT model? Like what's the difference? What's the chasm between the two? Is it orders of magnitude different, or is it just it has a little bit more semantic knowledge? What's the difference there?
So the models that I was highlighting earlier, those are the easier to run models. But at the frontier of open source, and you're actually at a really good timing asking this question, because there's I don't know whether you heard the news about Anthropic's latest model being banned by the US government for future release.
Mythos, right?
So yeah, Mythos. So it has kind of created a very interesting, weird situation, mostly because the frontier of open source AI model tends to be, I would say, give and take 3, 6 months, 9 months. People can argue on the exact semantics, but I would say 6 to 9 to 12 months would be a reasonable framing than the frontier of the closed source. And so the latest model that came out just last week was GLM 5.2. And this is around this performance level of the previous Opus model. And so to Entropy's credit, they have updated the Opus model, so it's not exactly the same level as their latest Opus model. And they technically have Mythos, which is a much better model, but no one has access to. So they are actually 2 steps ahead. But from you who can use the API, access it, the frontier of the closed source is only 1 step ahead where the frontier of open source is. And it's at that level where I actually challenge a lot of day-to-day folks that are not doing programming. Can they tell the difference? Or which is the output they prefer? It, well, this model is not going to run on a gaming PC. It's probably going to need an extremely beefy server. And if you want to run it at full precision or full quality, we are looking at an investment of easily 50K.
Okay.
You can download and run it.
Hmm.
And that's where it's an interesting opportunity that we ourselves also been reaping the benefits from, because it's part of our business. That businesses can actually run this model and have a full drop-in replacement for the pretty much all their AI workloads today. Because even OpenAI's recent investor report filings and has shown that over 60% of the businesses that is using OpenAI directly do not use the frontier model. They use the smaller and cheaper model. And now the best open source model has surpassed that. So there is
Right.
full drop-in replacements for lots of use cases, respectively. The major exceptions will be what most people are most interested on, like the frontier of research, the frontier of coding, code completions, and stuff like that. That is where some of the closed models tend to perform better, but the gap has been shrinking dramatically month by month.
So interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, and I guess this is just going to continue to go on, where open source models are going to shrink and they're going to become more competent or more capable as time goes on. And I guess, and you can speak to this, obviously, maybe the biggest hurdle is just people taking the first step and starting to use open source, because I'm assuming it's maybe a little bit more, you need to be a little bit more technically proficient to start using it compared to ChatGPT, where you just log in and start using it right away.
Yeah, definitely the case. So if you are using ChatGPT at a consumer level, frankly, most people at the consumer level, they will actually be stickier to their apps. For example, you may be having your own AI-driven assistant app. Notion also is probably a very good example of having a lot of AI-driven features that people use. And from your point of view, the model is agnostic. You don't really care what's the model under you. Yeah, you're going to Notion because that's where your notes is, and you're going to like do some AI features, for example.
Yeah.
I know some podcasters are using some AI tools to like automatically edit or to get highlight reels. No one, do you really know the model underneath it? At the
No.
app level, it really becomes irrelevant. But on the API level, yes, there is some challenges in like being able to like deploy some of these models on your own, run your own servers and things like that. But that's where companies like us and a lot of other companies called inference providers step in, because at the end of the day, what we are trying to do to simplify for most developers that are building these apps, for example, is tell us what model you want, pay us a certain amount per request, hit our API, and you get the AI response. And that's it. Do you need to know what's a GPU cluster, what's B300, what's NVLink, things like that?
No.
Probably not. You just want an AI model that you know has a certain quality, your input and outputs. That's it.
Okay, maybe that's a good segue into what you're specifically doing with Featherless AI. So you have a serverless inference platform. Can you explain what that is, and then also explain a little bit more about what specifically what you guys are up to?
So Federalist AI, we run the world's largest AI platform of models. We are trying to build the what we view as the operating system to run all AI workloads respectively. So when I say the world's largest platform, I mean 30,000 models, which we are trying to scale to over 2 million models. That's the current number at Hugging Face, respectively, which is the public repository of all AI models. We don't believe in a future where there's only one AI model for one use case. and for everyone to use. We actually believe in a future where there's going to be thousands or maybe even millions of models that are unique to various individuals, companies, or use cases that people will then use, or maybe even in the future where AI models can be tailored to you as an individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we are the only provider right now that do this uniquely, where we serve thousands of models, and we are trying to build that infrastructure for towards that future, because that's how I view the future, and which makes us very different, because it's like when I was young and I understood AI. When I'm much younger, I viewed things like the Jetsons, where basically you have an AI robot for each family for their own respective needs. I didn't imagine this future where a single company with their own set of model will say that everyone should use us and nothing else.
Right.
That's not the future I wanted.
Okay. Interesting. And can you touch maybe on this point of an AI model specifically for you? Because I think like there's a lot of business owners that listen to the podcast, and I think one of the future visions here is, if I'm a business owner, I want a model that understands my company perfectly, right? And then I can speak, essentially, I can speak to my company and my team can speak to my company. And rather than going through all the folders and looking at SOPs, you have an assistant, let's call him Bob, and Bob acts as if it's your company and you're able to speak and understand your company. So do you see in the near future these open models enabling something like that?
Definitely. That's
Yeah.
actually part of our line of research as well.
Perfect.
So I think one of the so like you may hear a lot of things within AI, like techniques like, for example, RAG, vector databases, buzzwords around all those like agentic systems. Um, I think one of the brutal realities that right now about AI models, especially for those who have used it extensively, is that they are really horrible at learning, or more specifically, learning from mistakes.
Mm,
If you use an AI assistant and it makes some mistake, and then it's like you tell it not to do that same mistake again, you're more often than not going to see it repeat that mistake.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that ties into one of the fundamental issues with how we train AI. Right now, in order for an AI model to learn anything, we create thousands of data points for that one action.
Hmm.
So we train from an extremely vast amount of data, but this is very different from how we humans function. So the analogy, the end goal that I feel that we need to reach, which we are not there yet, to be clear, it's like the analogy that I sometimes use is, imagine an intern, or imagine an AI model in a robot. We're not a robotics company, but it's just for visualization.
Hmm.
And I threw that intern or that robot, intern for human, robot for AI, into the kitchen with my mom. And it probably never done cooking before. And my mom can be like, hey, do this, do that. And every time I make some mistakes, scold it. And it's like, hey, next time you do this, maybe repeat that process 10 times. And if at the end of the day it can cook my mom's dishes,
Mm,
that model is already better than me, because she kicked me out of the kitchen after 10 times.
right.
And that is what every business owner actually truly wants.
Yeah.
Like, they want an AI model that to do to do the very simple things within the company, and more obviously more complicated things, but to be able to like guide it, like, and through this process on their own. And we fail that litmus test hard. Right now, if you want to like tune the AI models, you need to get experts like me to tune your AI agents, and that's not the future of where it should be. It should be like someone like my mom or your parents to be able to like just talk to it and it learns.
Hmm.
That future is something that is slowly being built as we figure out better techniques to train AI models with less and less data,
Hmm.
and to tune these models. So today, there's a lot of people known as fine tuners that fine tune AI models for companies, and 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 early on during the early ChatGPT era, we saw people fine tuning requiring like millions of data points, hundreds of thousands of data points. But today fine tuners, they tend to even be able to like fine tune models with only, let's say, tens of thousands. still quite a lot of data points, but they're able to like steer the model towards like individual preferences, individual business use cases, and that's where things get interesting, respectively. When we can reduce that to 100, that's where things get unlocked on its own, and that's the future that we see and we are trying to build towards.
Do you have a rough timeline as to when that'll happen? Is it like 6 months away? Is it 6 years away? What's kind of the rough timeline here?
Unfortunately, this is one of the fundamentally hard AI problems.
Yeah.
That that lots of AI research groups are chasing towards. Um, the joke for it is like the AGI joke is like, yeah, it's always 6 months ahead away. But it won't surprise me if this one hard problem itself could easily take 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
But even then, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Mhm.
And also, even if it doesn't get solved, right, what it then means, right, is that instead of like day-to-day folks being able to customize AI models, you're going to see an entire entire industry spring up about people, literally experts, customizing their AI agents for various businesses, which is not that much different from the early web era where software developers
Mm.
end up creating websites for companies. Now, now you have AI engineers. You create agents for company, and and that that is still a very possible future that will come out, but it's just not as streamlined as I envision it to be, as well. And another thing, a tidbit about open source that I like to mention around timelines, right, is a lot of us like to see timelines in a very compressed way. And we like it's really worth reminding that the ChatGPT moment was only a few years ago,
Yeah.
and we somehow a lot of people decide, hey, open source is lagging. But if anything, I view this as an insanely fast progress for open source.
Yeah. Yeah.
Historically, for every major tech innovation, right, that started closed source first, right, and then subsequently open source started to catch up, right, we are talking about like 5 6 years or a decade. Like the best example I have, for example, right, that has the same parallels to AI is databases.
Mm.
When the first major database happened was IBM DB2, and people said the same thing. They spent millions, now worth billions, like how much what OpenAI did.
Mhm.
No one should compete with them. Then came Microsoft SQL and Oracle that did no Microsoft SQL and then subsequently MySQL, and that drew the same parallel. It's like, hey, suddenly you had other companies that were able to compete, and then suddenly you had companies that created this open source that version that is not as good but was usable. And then subsequently, you had improvement to MySQL, Postgres, and suddenly an entire explosion of various database technology, NoSQL. There's probably like 100 databases
Mm.
now. And the end result was enterprises using them all for various use cases, and a lot of them ending up being open source databases that enterprise use. So, it's like this same pattern happened, but historically, this took years. You're talking about 5 6 years in between these cycles. And in the AI space, those cycles happen in months.
Right.
And so, to me, the gap shrinking down to less than 6 months or less than 1 year is actually incredibly fast progress. And I would argue it probably doesn't matter anymore because the frontier of closed source could be viewed like a luxury car, and the
Mm.
open source models can be viewed like a Honda, and you don't use a Rolls Royce for your day-to-day commercial work. You use a Honda.
Right. Well, I think that's a perfect segue to the question that I was like, what's the pricing differences between this? You've got the luxury, let's call it Ferraris or whatever, and then you got the Honda. Is that also the same with pricing between open source and these closed source ChatGPT, et cetera models?
Yes. So if you look at the API prices, so the
Yes.
commercial API prices,
Yes.
respectively, if you look at the Opus, for example, Opus or GPT 5.5 Pro models, they are approximately 5 times more expensive than let's say the frontier of open source, which is GRM 5.2.
Mm-hmm.
And for most benchmarks and use cases, they are about 10 percentile better. But they are 10 percentile better.
Yes.
It's just like the luxury card is by specification better, but it costs way more.
That was that I'd forgotten to ask about that. Like, yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example. Answer. How much better are these things, even though they're 5 times the cost, or they get all the press, they get all the media attention, but how much better are they than the frontier models? And if they're only 10% better, and I would argue, I mean, I won't say it for other people, but for me, I'm probably not using, I use ChatGPT, not Claude all the time. I'm probably not using ChatGPT to its fullest extent. So even if it can produce 10% better results, I probably only need, whatever it is, a fraction of its actual capabilities. Super interesting. Could you also, before I forget, you've given us a couple tangible examples of what these open source models are able to do. Are there other like use cases that you're currently seeing open models for? Based on the fact that you said you see open models in the future being used for all different aspects in like a business case, for instance, like what, just maybe give us a couple more tangible examples so that people have something to connect in their minds when they're listening.
So what we see right now, how open source models are being adapted and used in the field, is actually across two major verticals: language or use cases. So language, take for example, for languages, for example, um, like the analogy I'll use is that my grandma from is Southeast Asian. She speaks 7 languages. She doesn't speak English or Chinese.
Mm.
And if you're aware about the majority of the sources of like AI models right now, it's from the English or the Chinese market. And so a lot of groups and communities have been taking these open source models that were dominantly English or Chinese or both, and been fine-tuning it with new languages, new data sets unique to their own region, for their own respective nations use case. So, for example, we host what Uganda's first language models. We also host some of the language models for Thailand, Taiwan, and a few other places. And we are happy to see these developments because these are models tuned for by people in the region for the region. The other major use cases that we see is models that are specialized towards certain specific commercial and industrial use. And it'll surprise a lot of people that when companies do this, right, they don't typically take the best and biggest model, because biggest is actually also expensive. Like the bigger the model is, the more expensive it is, give and take. So sometimes companies will take some of the small models and prepare the data sets to hyper specialize these models for specific use cases. So, for example, there's a lot of models within the robotics or drone space specifically for navigation, identifications of stuff that that is small enough that it can run on your iPhone.
Right.
There's also a lot of models specifically, for example, like coding is a major vertical. It's an extremely popular vertical that a lot of companies fine tune their models for coding use cases. But we also seen companies that fine tune their models for customer support, for beyond customer support, also like to be able to fine tune models for more specialized use cases like accounting, legal. So like Harvey is probably a major example that fine tune open source models for legal use cases. And we see this pattern repeat. Like we even seen a construction company fine tune a model for safety guidelines. So
Cool.
anytime there's enough commercial value for and demand for a model that to be able to provide that need, companies will come together or on their own put in the resources to specialize this model so that they can run it at scale.
So is the goal here with your platform in the near future to have all of these models available? They've been specialized, and then people can what? Buy them, rent them, connect their APIs so that they have a hyper specialized open source model for their specific use case in their company or in their life. Is that the goal?
The goal is more of like to unlock all this,
Mm,
whether you want hyper specialized model or you want the bigger drop-in replacement
mm,
to the biggest model right now that you have access to.
right, right.
We want to just unlock those barriers. We are happy to serve both ends. Hyper specialized model tends to be used in high volume, and where the larger models are more expensive, and it really doesn't matter to us. It's like
Yeah.
as long as we unlock the access, and understandably, because of the vast collection of AI models, it can be rather hard to even find some of these models. So
Hmm.
for a lot of companies that actually start their process into like open source model, typically it's I would recommend actually the bigger models first or the frontier of it, mostly because they will have a direct one-to-one switch from what they are familiar to with OpenAI or Anthropic or Google Gemini. And then
Hmm.
only as they scaled up their business use cases, then it's like, hey, we have this part where the AI model needs to like click on certain elements on the screen and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, we know the model for that, we know the model for that. And then that's where we have start having recommendation. But this kind of optimization, when you're talking about those hyper specialized model, is usually at the point where a company is spending hundreds of thousands a month, right, on
Hmm.
AI, where it's automating all these tasks, where replacing that $10,000 bill with a $1,000 model here and
Hmm.
there for that one step becomes significant enough that it's part of the conversation.
Hmm.
If you are running at a scale where it's like a single agent, a single Hermes agent, for example, or open cloud agent, typically those conversations don't happen yet. So we are talking about like much larger scales.
Right, right. Interesting. Okay, and then one final question on this point, and forgive me for my ignorance here. Um, let's use the example of that construction company making those safety courses, training the model on safety courses. Is that then uh, available to other people, or it's only available to that construction company because they've obviously put in the money to train that? Like, how would that work on your platform?
So on our platform, it's really up to the individuals. So
Okay.
you can upload private models, or you could publish open models as well. And typically, when people publish open models, they publish it through Hugging Face. So
Yeah.
this is the online repository. Think of it as GitHub. Think the energy of it
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
GitHub being the repository, and if you want to deploy, let's say, front end websites, you would think of Vercel. Think of
Mhm.
Featherless as the Vercel for AI in
Gotcha.
that lens.
Gotcha.
And and surprisingly, companies do choose to open this up.
Mm.
Mostly for various magnitude of reason, but sometimes one key is really like being able to see adoption and feedback by their peers. Sometimes when the companies tend to open source these things, it may not necessarily be their core business either. Like,
Right.
for example, like when I said the company did the construction safety model, their main business is construction.
Yes. 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 Exactly.
they yeah, they want some feedback on the safety model to be able to like automate their safety screening processes and everything.
Hmm.
And and they got valuable feedback from the public, from the community, and from their peers and
Right.
technically competitors. Another major example that we were quite excited to work with recently was AT&T hotel line of model. So AT&T, for example, they created their own line of model for telco customer support, coding, and like apparently like within the telco, there's like some proprietary systems that have some proprietary language to like connect towers to each other. I don't know the details
Mm.
on that
Yeah.
one, but they even train the models to support that,
Mm.
and they published it openly. In fact they are open to actually helping technically competitors, but also possibly telcos in other countries to fine-tune these models for those for those telcos. So it could potentially be a business use case as well. So it's like sometimes the line between the why would they open source it can be a bit interesting respectively. So there's been a lot of surprises seeing how open some of these companies are willing to push their models out.
Interesting. Very interesting. I see that our time is winding down here, Eugene. Are there any, because we have touched on like the future of, I always like to end the podcast on this kind of idea. Are there any questions that I should have asked you that I didn't, that would bring up an interesting idea about like what's going to happen over let's say the next 3 years, because 5 and 10 years is way too far to guess.
I would say for anyone who's like running your own company or business operation, things like that,
Mhm.
think really hard about the amount of leverage you could put to AI to use to accelerate your business.
Mhm.
It means that you may not think so was possible previously, and you may in ways that you may not need to hold yourself back on. So, for example, one use case that I highlight a lot recently is that I used to do professional work building dashboards and analytical systems on company data for other companies at one point in my life. And to be able to just provide an AI model access to my company's database, and I just ask it the questions, and it just
Yes. Yes.
look at the data, write the scripts, compile the data, and here's the report. And I'm like, I used to spend a good 6 years of my career doing this for others, and now I can just prompt it away.
Yeah.
Like, think of it from your own use case now. Now you do not need to hire an IT consultant to crunch through your data.
Mhm.
You can get to the data itself. Sure, maybe you need to double check for hallucination, for mistakes. Use it as guidelines because you can't 100% trust AI without double checking it.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
the ability to gain those insights, to make decisions, to automate things that you do not need a developer to do so. I feel that is the bigger multiplier that a lot of people are sleeping on. It's we can talk about developers increasing 3 times productivity, but I think what's more impactful is the rest of the world increasing 3 times productivity.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's going to be an interesting, very interesting world where productivity, I mean, we are already seeing it, right? But productivity is gonna absolutely soar for those businesses that know how to utilize AI properly. And I guess one of the things that I'm getting as a business owner out of this conversation is you can enable aspects within your company through AI at a much lower price point if you're using open source models compared to the closed source models that I think everybody is aware of. So I think that's, for me, just for myself, it's certainly something to worth looking into, and maybe doing a little test case within my company. So I guess thank you for this conversation to open up my eyes to something that might be very beneficial for me and my team. Eugene, we'll have your LinkedIn and your website up on the show notes. Are there any other places that you want people to follow or see what you're up to?
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter, Pico Creator, PICO CREATOR. I also run a Substack, Tech Talk CTO, where I randomly write about my thoughts be it on the business side or the AI side of things. I created that blog when I was a CTO, but now I'm CEO and founder of this. So
Awesome.
I decided not to rename it.
No worries. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and sharing your insights. It was very, very interesting. I think I need to have a couple more open source discussions on the podcast because it's certainly something that I personally want to get a little bit more into. So thanks for coming on and taking the time to talk. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate being here as well. Take care.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.